So the channel got 15,000 subscribers. I thought it might be kind of cool to do something that we usually do, which is look at my build, and we'll take that and we'll sort of turn it on its head. We'll flip it upside down, and I can maybe help you guys with your build, because one thing that happens over the course of 15,000 subscribers is I get asked all the time, hey man, you should try this build, you should make this build, this is the build I was thinking of, how does this work? So what we'll do is this. Here's how you make your build, and we'll look at some people's builds in invasions, and we'll try and figure out, like, you know, hey, what's wrong with this dude's build? Now, keep in mind, a lot of the people that I'm fighting are not really invested in PvP in these games. Now, it happens to them nonetheless, and there's no getting around that. So, when it comes to making a build, if you're going to be playing online, assuming you're not doing some sort of challenge run, then you have to make a build. That's, you know, just the way it is. Now, this guy, for example, has great blood-tinged gems, and he's very low level. I'm level 43, so I assume he's somewhere in that neighborhood. Now, he might be an anti-twink. I hunt the twinkers. An anti-twink who hunts the twinkers is basically someone who sits at a bonfire with, like, a shit ton of extra levels, and like maybe they're not good enough to go fight multiple people, so they just sit at the bonfire and do that. Or this dude could just be doing some fucking invasions himself, and I keep invading him, whatever. But let's talk about his build. He's taken the time to go into the Chalice dungeons and get these badass blood-tinged gems, which two-shot me with arrows. Uh-oh, I've got a shield, it does no damage. So, his A game is now effed. His A game got effed in the A. His weapons don't do enough damage physically for his R1 spam to really do anything. And as long as I can avoid the bullets, now he's using the Reiter Palish, I don't know how the fuck you say that word. He's using the bullets on it, and they still do very good damage, but his physical attacks are not good at all. It's like I'm being hit by any other low-level weapon that somebody didn't bother to put good gems in. So, if your A game is your only game, then you need another game. You've got to have a B game. That dude also didn't have a lot of hit points. I can understand why. If I'm two-shotting people with Simon's Bowblade, you know, I don't, you know, what do I need hit points for? The answer is you do. You always need hit points. Across all these games, the most important stat is Vigor or Vitality, whatever they call it in the game you're playing. Hit points, HP, that's the most important thing. If your build doesn't have that, you don't have shit. You need a lot of it. Especially if you plan on being an invader. If you plan on being an invader, you need to get as close to the soft cap as possible, as quickly as possible. Even if you're playing like at soul level 15 or soul level 30, and you're doing invasions there, you still need a shit zillion hit points. There's a build I despise, the Lap Twink, where you're like soul level 15 or soul level 30, and you've got nothing but Vigor, Endurance, and Vitality, and then just enough Strength and Dex to use the Dragon Slayer Axe. Okay, and then you buff the Dragon Slayer Axe. That is the most efficient Twink build. But it's also disgusting, and I hate it. It offers no one anything. It's just a loading screen simulator. If you're looking for that sort of thing, just click off the video and go watch one of the millions of others that tell you how to make that build. I don't personally, that's not my thing. So, hit points, hit points, hit points. You need hit points. That's the most important thing. Dark Souls 1, 2... Bloodborne, Dark Souls 3, any of those. HP, probably the most important stat. Again, because if you're an invader, you're getting hit by multiple people. Even if you're not an invader, you should probably still have a lot. Even if you're just making a build to like run through PvE. My friend Schwa Akari sent me a link to a Reddit thread where this person was talking about how to make a sorcerer, and this person listed every stat in the game except for Vigor. Wizards need Vigor. Everyone needs Vigor. You're gonna get hit. You need Vigor. Now, if you get invaded at level 100 in Dark Souls 3, okay, and you've got 27 Vigor, you're going to get absolutely destroyed unless you play perfectly. You're gonna have to play really well. The impetus is on you to play great because you don't have any hit points, and I do. And we'll show off some of that a little later on. Stuff like the dragon builds in a lot of these games, especially in Dark Souls 3. Jesus Christ. The dragon builds, you're naked, so you're taking extra damage because you're not wearing any armor. But in exchange, you get to do more damage, right? And there's a balance here. Do more damage, take more damage. And then on the other side of that, it's, do no damage, can take a lot of damage. And you're trying to find like that sweet spot in the middle, right? That's where you want to be. So, bigger, super important. Then we'll come down to minimum requirements. We'll skip around a little bit. Minimum requirements, I'm talking about strength and or dex and or intelligence and or faith and or arcane and or blood tinge. Whatever weapon you want to use, it's going to have its minimum requirements that you must meet. So, for example, a weapon might require 16 strength and 12 dexterity, or 12 skill. That's its minimum requirements. Now, when I'm making a build, I typically have like 1 or 2 weapons, or like a weapon and a spell, or 2 weapons I want to pair together, and that's the idea for my build. So, the first thing I do is I look at the minimum requirements for those weapons. And I get those stats in order. Get my strength where it needs to be, dex, intelligence, faith, arcane, blood tinge, whatever. I get those stats to where they have to be in order for me to use the weapon or weapons or weapon and spells that I'm going to use. And then I pump up vigor as much as I can. And I look at where my vigor is sitting at. Now, my soul level 36 dude, my vigor is sitting at 28, I think, 28 or 29. But then I've got some rings on that's going to increase that. And we'll go over those rings in all the games. But especially Dark Souls 3, because you get 3 ring slots, and there's a shit ton of rings to choose from. Dark Souls 1, not so much. And Bloodborne is pretty easy, in my opinion, with the runes. So, minimum requirements, and then a shit ton of hit points. And then after I look at my hit points, I say, okay, now after I put these rings on that are going to increase my hit points, what do I have left? And that's where I say, okay, let's give myself like a little bit of endurance. Let's give myself a little more dexterity, so I'm doing more damage. A lot of times, especially when I very first started the channel, people would see my builds and they would be like, you don't do a lot of damage. And I don't, but I don't die either. I can get hit a lot. And I get hit a lot. One, because I'm not ready for Evo just yet, guys. But 2, because I'm fighting a shit ton of people. Typically there's 2 or 3 people in a world that I'm in, so I get hit a lot. I would rather be able to get hit a lot and do some decent damage than do outrageous damage and then just die the first time I get hit. Prisoner's Chain. He gives you this goes on every build. This goes on every build. Every build. It gives you vigor, endurance, vitality. Gives you 5 levels of each. Okay, so that's 15 free levels that you get. Oh, but Saint, it takes your absorption down. Yes, it does. I would urge you to look to the left, though. See that defense and how it's blue? It's because it's going up. Your flat defense goes up. Your absorption goes down. As a result, you can tell when someone's wearing the Prisoner's Chain at low level because they take less damage. I know it says you're going to take more damage, but you don't. Just trust me. It also gives you 5 levels of vigor, endurance, and vitality, which allows me to take this up to 30-something vigor, okay? And then we're going to slap the Ring of Favor plus 3 on there. And again, this one's very good for just about every build. Ring of Favor is actually better at higher levels. Prisoner's Chain is better at lower levels. But I like them both all the time. Ring of Favor doesn't give you levels. It skips the middleman. It just gives you more HP, stamina, and equip load. No extra stats, no extra levels. Just straight HP, stamina, and equip load. It's percentage based, which means if you're wearing it and you've got 40, 40, 40 vigor, endurance, vitality, you will get better returns than I get at, 20, 20, 20. Does that make sense? Because it's based off of percentage. You're getting a multiplier there. So I'm wearing the Ring of Favor and the Prisoner's Chain. I think there's no reason not to have those on every build. Then you've got rings like Dexterity Ring, the Hunter Ring, the Strength Ring, which is the Knight Ring, the Intelligence Ring, which is the Scholar Ring, the Priestess Ring, which is the Faith Ring, right? And those can help you meet your minimum requirements. You can use those to offset stats that you don't want to commit to. So like, oh, this is a Dex build, but he needs, 12 strength, or I need 17 strength and I've only got 12 because I want to use a great sword. Okay, we'll just slap the Night Ring on him and boom, there's 5 levels of strength for free. Or you can say, this is a dex build, I'm going to throw the Hunter Ring on it, and now all of a sudden it can do more damage because it's got 5 free levels of dexterity. Also, any ring that gives you X number of free levels is going to raise your flat defense. And at low levels, again, that helps because the weapons aren't upgraded all the way. And so you're taking less damage from each hit, and it really adds up. It really, really does add up. You're taking less damage from each hit. You can tell when someone's wearing the Prisoner's Chain in Dark Souls 3. Now in Bloodborne, we're just going to make our own Ring of Favor. Okay? We've got 3 rune slots, and we've got 1 Covenant rune slot. Alright, so here's my Ring of Favor, and I think this is pretty widely accepted amongst the Bloodborne PvP community as what you ought to be doing. So give yourself the best clockwise Metamorphosis rune, which is 15% extra HP. Then give yourself the second best clockwise Metamorphosis rune, which is 10% HP. Equip both of those. They stack together. Now you've got 25% extra HP. Then we're going to give ourselves the anti-clockwise Metamorphosis rune, which gives us 20% extra stamina. You can get the top tier version of these, the 15% clockwise and the 20% anti-clockwise, from the False Depth dungeons. If you don't know what that means and you're interested in it, just Google it. Those are free. Easy game, easy life. And I would recommend those even if you're just doing PvE through the game. They're a huge help. They are wildly beneficial. Also keep in mind, in Bloodborne and Dark Souls 1, the soft cap for HP is around the 50, level 50 vigor / vitality. So you're going to want to have closer to 50, whereas in Dark Souls 3, you're going to want to have closer to 40, right? So that brings us to endurance. Endurance is kind of, in Dark Souls 1, it's really important. It's really important because it determines your equip load. In the other games, it's not that important. That's why most people in Bloodborne don't even fuck with it. They won't level it up at all, or level it up to like 15 at most, even at like 150. Even people who are PvPing at blood level 150 only have like 15 endurance. Think about that. Think about how many stats they have, and their endurance is at 15 tops max. Now, you can up that a little bit, but really, you don't need to. Dark Souls 3 is very kind of similar. I have started playing with much less endurance in Dark Souls 3 than I used to. Now, if you've got like a big, huge, ultra great weapon, or a big ass hammer, then yeah, you might want some endurance. Just so you can swing it a few times and still be able to dodge and get out of people's way, stuff like that. Absolutely worth. In my opinion, a little extra endurance. In Dark Souls 3, if you're going to be blocking a lot, if your build has a shield, then maybe look at giving yourself a little bit more endurance. If you're going to play like the Sticky Bandit, his low level build can do that sellsword combo like 100 times off 1 stamina bar. If that's the point of your build, then absolutely, for sure, give yourself all the endurance you need. I'm just saying you can kind of do without it. But if you've noticed how the conversation has gone thus far, this very one-sided conversation that I'm having, what I'm telling you is you can pretty much do without a lot of stuff. It basically comes, what you cannot do without is hit points. That's what it comes down to. You need hit points. You need vigor. You need vitality. You're going to get hit. So, in Bloodborne, a lot of your damage is coming from the fact that there's no weapon level matchmaking, which means I can take these plus 9 weapons that I've got here, plus 10 weapons even, and I can go fight these people who have probably like plus 3 and plus 4 weapons, okay? And I'm out-damaging them because my weapon is upgraded more. Then you can go into the Chalice Dungeon and you can get yourself some crazy good gems if you so choose. Again, I've said this before. I'll say it again if you ask me. In my opinion, blood gems are not that important for low-level invaders. Most of the time, the people you come up across, they're co-opers. Why are they co-oping? Because this game is difficult. Why is this game difficult? Because they're not doing any damage. Why are they not doing any damage? Because they didn't go into the Chalice dungeons. Now, occasionally you'll come across guys like our friend Simon's Bowblade, who killed me in 2 arrows, and you'll come across people who do have really good Chalice gems at low level, but it's not that often in my experience. So, you know, I went and I call them good enough gems. I just go get 18% gems, you know, and typically that works out for me just fine, and it saves me trips into Chalice dungeons and stuff like that, which is nice. But it's your time, you know, if you want to go into the Chalice dungeon. I enjoy the Chalice dungeons. I think they're fun, so, you know, there's nothing wrong with going and farming a little bit for some good gems. It's up to you. That's all in the preparation. And that's what Dark Souls PvP really comes down to when you do these invasions. It's preparation. The invader is prepared to take on his opponents. The host and his phantoms, are they prepared or not? If they're prepared, then the invader has a hard fight ahead of him. If they're not prepared, then, you know, the invader typically acts as he's supposed to, as basically just a deterrent from the level. You don't get to access the rest of the level. You don't get to beat the level with co-opers, because I made the level hard again when you tried to make the game easy. So, you know, keep that in mind. It's all about preparation. But, again, it can be about preparation even if you're just making, like, a PvE build. If you're just making a build to run through the game, and you don't really have PvP in mind. Well, if you're playing online, keep in mind, PvP is going to happen. Occasionally, it's going to happen to you. Probably. So, just because it's not something you plan on doing, doesn't mean it's not something that can't happen. And I'm here to tell you, as someone who has done a shit ton of PvP, just because somebody has the best PvP stuff on their character doesn't mean that they know anything about what they're doing at all. When Dark Souls Remastered came out, I was terrified every time I saw a Havelmom. I was like, oh my god, look at this tryhard. Look at this tryhard. Here comes this fucking Havelmom to backstab me with a great club. And then the more and more I played Dark Souls Remastered, the more I realized these were just average players using really good shit. And there's something to be said for that in these games. That's really what it comes down to. Do you know what is really good shit? If you know what's really good shit, then you've got a leg up on most of the people that play these games. If you go farther than that and you say, okay, what makes this good? And you start to look at, you peel it back like an onion, and you're crying because it's Dark Souls. And you're like, what makes this good? Is it because Ludwig's Holy Blade has a guaranteed 2-hit combo that'll absolutely kill most players? Yeah, that's what makes Ludwig's Holy Blade good. There's things that make... Everything's got some redeeming quality in it. Everything's got some redeeming quality in it. It's just on you to sort of find that redeeming quality. Now, the thing about redeeming qualities is they can be a bit different. The redeeming quality of the Hunter's Axe in PvE is that fully charged R2 does a shit zillion damage and knocks people down. However, that is not the redeeming quality of the Hunter's Axe in PvP. In PvP, that fully charged R2 is pretty trash, and you might get parried for it. At best, you're going to get outspaced and deleted. At worst, you're going to get parried and fucking styled on. So, what makes it good, though? What makes the Hunter's Axe good? It's got really cool transformation attacks. It does a shit ton of damage. The R1s aren't very slow, for a heavier weapon. It's got hyper armor on several of the attacks. It's a fun weapon. It's a very good weapon. It's just knowing the range and the spacing on it and how to work. In my opinion, I like coming at people with the transformed version because it's a bit like a halberd, and it's got